we're an amazing machine that the control is in the brain and that control works electrically.
Would it be true to say that not all EMFs are bad necessarily?
Imagine that magnetic field is exerting a force into this cell. So now my enzymes, they're like, oh my goodness, I have to fight against this new force that I don't know where it's coming from.
These are EMFs that are potentially ricocheting off of the other walls, causing them to multiply. And I also didn't realize that I am the conductor.
Welcome to Golden Girl, a space where we dive deep into health, healing, connection, and community. I'm your host, Becca Golden, and this podcast is all about sharing and documenting my journey. Each episode, we'll discuss topics like health and wellness, what I'm learning in therapy, work-life balance, relationships, community, and all the ways I strive for more aliveness and presence every day. Let's dive in.
Dr. Ritter, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Of course. I am so fascinated by your background. I want my listeners to hear what your original career was and how you got started doing what you do. But to begin, can you just tell everyone what you do today?
Perfect. Yeah. So I protect people from electromagnetic fields, electromagnetic radiation. That would be the right word to say. And basically, we are electrical human beings. And now we're using the air to have communications, signals. It turns out that those signals are electrical in nature as well. So whatever I do is I protect them from that, especially at night in the sleeping locations. That is what I do.
Great. And can you tell us about your background? How did you get started in this?
Yeah. So my background is in medicine. I'm a medical doctor. And I have 3 medical specialties. I'm a pediatrician. And that's not how I got into this world, into this new thing. Actually, I become a pediatric neurologist. That is exactly how I got into this area. Turns out that being a pediatric neurologist, we really don't see whatever we do, but we work with electric systems and the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. We work with electricity that we need to produce, the brain need to produce in order to give signals to everywhere in the human body. So we're an amazing machine that the control is in the brain and that control works electrically. So how I got into this point is because I had patients that had electrical disturbances. Most of them were epileptic patients and autistic patients.
So these were kids. These were kids.
Yes, I'm a pediatrician, so I become a pediatric neurologist. I never actually practiced neurology in adults because I'm a pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
So these are pediatric patients in epilepsy. It was one of the main things in there. It turns out that I perform a test, which is an electroencephalogram. Like the name says it, electro is electricity. Encephalo is the way that we talk about the brain. And so gram means that it's written. So basically, I used to see in there, it's the electric activity that the brain produces by itself in order to give those commands to the rest of the human body. So we can move, so we can think, so we can pretty much everything we do electrically. It turns out that there was some parts of the electroencephalogram that and I'm going to say until today, a lot of neurologists, they don't really know what is that. Well, I was a little bit curious in there and I tried to figure it out. What was that? It turns out that electric activity surrounding the human body is the one that it gets there picked in the electroencephalogram. That is how I got into this world. It took several years, right? I mean, I'm saying it just really fast, tracking the whole thing. It took me a while to understand that whatever I was seeing in these patients, it was electric activity that didn't belong to them. If it didn't belong to them, belong to some other sources. But at the same time, it's been impacting the electrical system of this central nervous system. It was a huge deal for me. And I want everybody to understand that that is how I got into this point. It's not because nobody told me, hey, you should study EMFs. I didn't even know that EMFs was a thing. I have to discover little by little. But it's not because anybody told me. It's because somebody was aware of that. It's because I saw it in these patients. So that's how pretty much I got into this world.
That's really remarkable that you were able to pick up on these abnormalities in the EEGs of these children who are coming in to see you with symptoms. I mean, I don't think that there are many pediatric neurologists who become EMF shielders and inspectors. So I'm really glad that you do what you do.
So far, there's no, but I'm trying. Now I'm trying to tell the medical field, hey, turn around to here. And that's what I'm trying to do as well.
Yeah, it's really great work that you're doing. So for the average person who doesn't know what EMFs are, or maybe a person who thinks that EMFs aren't real,
yes,
can you break down what is an EMF and why is it real?
Let's start with one thing that I need everybody to understand. We live in this environment. This environment, pretty much, I'm touching air right now with my hands, with my face, etc. Everybody does that. It turns out that the air that is surrounding us, it has the ability to conduct electrical particles. I'm going to say particles, but electric signals is whatever it can conduct. So we can send electric signals from one side of this room to another side of this room, or from one side of this state to another side of the state, because the air is a good conduit for electric activity. So that is the principle why we have cell phone and cell phone towers right now. And because we can send from one tower to remote distances a signal. So what is EMFs? EMFs is electromagnetic fields, which now the name says it all again. Electrical, electromagnetic. There's always going to be those two components in signals and waves. And their fields, they go through the space that we have surrounding us. Why? So here's one thing that hopefully resonates with everybody. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows what Wi-Fi is. Mm-hmm. A lot of people has Wi-Fi in their houses, and if they don't have it, they go to a cafe or to a store so they can have the signal. Mm-hmm. If I ask anybody, hey, could you see the Wi-Fi with your bare eyes, with your naked eyes? They can't.
Right.
They will know that they have Wi-Fi once they open their devices and they try to connect it. Therefore, EMFs are invisible to their naked eyes. And maybe later on, we'll get into those details, but it's as real as we have cell phone signals, which are invisible as well, Wi-Fi, and you name it, Bluetooth, and all those signals that we use every day. Just the fact that we don't see it, it doesn't mean that we don't use them. Therefore, they're real completely.
Right. And I think people who doubt that EMF has any impact on the human body, a really good response is what you said before about how your body has an electrical signal. Is that correct?
Well, it's electrical in nature.
Your body's electrical in nature.
So it has the capability to absorb other electrical signals as well.
Okay. And so that makes total sense to me. I'm going to continue just breaking this down as you explain to us to make sure that I understand too. So because your body is capable of receiving an electrical signal, that is why we are impacted by the EMFs around us.
Exactly.
And just because we can't see them, we know they're there, like Wi-Fi, like Bluetooth. We can't see it, but we know it's there.
Exactly.
Okay.
One thing that I want everybody to kind of have in mind, if you're in the dark late at night, right? Usually that happens. And you already turn off the light in your room. but you start taking your clothes off, then sometimes it sparks. It sparks because you have static in there. You capture that static. Of course, it's going to dissipate really fast. But that is one way where everybody can know, oh my goodness, I am absorbing that is EMFs as well. So that is doing something visual that normally is not visual.
So would it be true to say that not all EMFs are bad necessarily?
Well, so man-made electromagnetic fields, they will impact humans no matter what. If they get surrounding us, they will impact humans. Now, what would be the difference, I'm going to say, 40 years ago? Well, 40 years ago, we don't even had cell phone towers, cell phones. It was the very beginning, and it wasn't rolled out everywhere. It was just for a few scientist projects and for a few guys to use. The thing is that the density that we had back in those days, it was extremely low. Man-made electromagnetic fields was mostly from power lines. Power lines, let's remember, we don't have that many years. We almost have a century with electricity.
Yeah.
Before a century, a little bit more than that, we don't even had electricity as human society. Therefore, a few years ago, a few decades ago, the density that we have, it was lower. And I'm going to say electric fields from power lines, they're important because now I'm going to talk about a little bit of science in there. That's not really science. I don't want anybody to get bored with that. But the thing is that by law, and this is law of physics, if you have a wire, imagine power lines, this wire has current, has electricity, by law is going to have a field around it. Again,
by
that
law
field,
of physics.
by law of physics.
Okay.
So no human can break that.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, that field is going to be invisible. Here's the other thing, that if we try to touch it, we will absorb it, but we cannot feel it because we don't have sensors for electromagnetic fields. Right now, if I touch something and I can feel if it's hot, I can feel the temperature because we have sensors for temperature. If it's vibrating, I will feel it because we have sensors for vibration. If it's causing me harm, I'm going to feel the pain because we have sensors. But it turns out that we as humans, we don't have sensors for electromagnetic fields. So we will absorb them without noticing that we're absorbing it.
It makes sense from a biological standpoint too, because, in the times of cavemen, there weren't man-made EMFs at that time. So the human biology didn't.
We don't need it because it wasn't meant for men to know.
Yeah, we needed to have heat sensors so that we don't get caught on fire.
Exactly.
But there were no man-made EMFs, so we weren't designed to be able to pick up on that.
Exactly. Those cavemen, they did have some exposure to EMFs, but from a different nature.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if you want to talk about that right now.
That's okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about
That's
that
another
later.
rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about that another time. But for today, I really want to focus on the EMFs that people experience in their day-to-day life that maybe they don't want to be exposed to, or things that they can mitigate. So I know that you're a wealth of knowledge about what EMF is, what it does to us, but you've also worked with patients and clients who have had adverse health effects from being surrounded by EMF and conducting being a conductor for the EMF.
Exactly. That's a good word to say.
Yeah. So can you talk about what those symptoms are? What were people experiencing that caused them to come to you?
Yeah. So I had to, and let me talk about that in the same tune that I talk a little bit more in depth what I do.
Yes.
So I learned that EMFs are a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a biologist. A biologist, even if I just reach the top of my field, I'm a pediatric neurologist. In the brain, there's nobody else above that. So I I got to the top of there. I didn't know so many things. It turns out that I had to learn 2 more things. One, sleep medicine. Sleep medicine, because EMF, the first thing that they have an impact on is how you sleep. And we'll talk about that. So I didn't know anything about that, so I had to study. But then I got into a point where, oh my goodness, I need to learn more things. So I quit everything. I quit my practice to learn a little bit more. And I studied physics. I had to complement all my studies in biology with physics. So I studied 4 years physics. And I started from the very beginning, right? Because I didn't know anything about that. Why? Because I needed to understand what I see now as my enemy. I mean, I just do EMFs right now. I'm not an expert in any other things, but biological effects of EMFs. So in order to understand my enemy, I needed to understand the laws ruling my enemy, which are in physics. They're not in biology. Therefore, as a medical doctor, I was not prepared to understand. And that is why so far we don't see a lot of medical doctors just learning about a toxin, an electric toxin. But because we're not equipped. Now that I have this knowledge in physics, I can apply now to understand so many different things about it. How it behaves, that is very important. How many types of man-made EMFs are? What are the biological effects of one and the other one? We still need a lot of research, but I can describe right now a few of them, going back to that question. So even if I don't practice medicine anymore and I don't practice the way that I used to, the way that I used to is like any other doctor. I go every day to my office, right? I have a table where I explore patients, and I have a desk where I type exactly what you're telling me, etc. I don't do that anymore. But whatever I do is I try to assess what is the exposure that you can have. Now, here's a thing. The exposure that we have is not just the current exposure. Let's say I live right now in this house. That is the only thing that I should be aware of EMFs? No. It turns out that my whole life I've been exposed to different types of EMFs and different dosage, I'm going to say. And I always like to say an example. It's not a real example, but people can understand that better. Imagine that I was born and my parents had a house underneath power lines. Didn't happen, but
that's pretty common.
It is pretty common. Yeah. So, like I said, because there's a law that it says that those power lines carry current, by law, they're going to have an electric field.
By law of physics.
By law of physics, exactly. So how strong that field is going to be depends on how many voltage they carry. It's not the same to carry 120 volts like the ones that we have in the walls in here. We shouldn't. But we do have very close to our rooms 120 volts. It's not the same that than to have 135,000 volts. I'm going to say like 60 feet above your house.
Wait, so just to clarify, you're saying that the voltage of the electrical wiring in a wall is 120?
It's 120.
And then how much is in power lines?
It could depend on which type of power lines, but the big ones, they can carry 135,000 volts per line. And imagine.
So you could potentially have your house under several power lines, and each one of those could have up to 135,000 volts.
Exactly.
Compared to the 120
that
could electrocute you in your walls.
Yeah, and they have an impact.
That's crazy.
So here's the thing. I want everybody to start understanding. The dosage that we get exposed, it matters. So Now, imagine this is an imaginary example, right? As a hypothetical example. But imagine that I live for 8 years in that house, that it was 50 feet from those power lines. Each one of those lines carry 135,000, can be more. But imagine, and sometimes they have 7 lines. Therefore, the field is strong enough that is gonna, like I said, it's a field. It's gonna go, I don't know, I'm gonna say 5 football fields from the source. So my house is right there, 50 feet from there. That means that I'm gonna be exposed day after day, night after night. And that is important. When I imagine that my parents, they put my room really nice and cozy, but they don't know that I have a toxin, an enemy in there that is electrical in nature and that is attacking me every day that I'm there. They think that I'm safe inside of the house. Nobody can steal me. I don't know, right? But the thing is that I need people to understand that we're exposed to these things since a long time ago. And I'm talking about that, and decades ago, it was probably just exposure to power lines. So it was a low frequency electromagnetic field that it was impacting an area depending on the voltage that they carry, the current that they carry, that goes, I mean, it's limited, right? But it gets into the area that is surrounding. Well, right now, these days, we have that one. And on top of that one, we have more.
This is like the kid has the Wi-Fi router in their room. Their family has a Tesla. Is this like it just piles on now? There's so much more.
There are different types of EMFs. And yeah, the closer that you are to the sources, the more impact that it can have.
Right.
So we will eventually divide EMFs in different types. 5 different types is whatever a human should be aware, because they behave differently in the air. And they disperse differently, and because they have different impacts in the human body as well.
Okay, so there's 5 different types that humans are impacted by that we know of?
Yeah. We can subdivide it in 2 main ones.
Okay.
And 2 main ones. Low frequencies, which pretty much here in the States is 60 hertz. If we go to Europe, it will be 50 hertz. So that's the way that we produce electricity. 50 hertz in Europe, 60 hertz in here in the States.
Classic Europe having better.
Well, I mean, and that point is not better one or the other one for the human point of view. It's both are
okay, so like 50 to 60.
Yeah. So we're gonna divide those ones in low frequencies and high frequencies. Low frequencies, we're gonna take care of 2 different types. One is gonna be the field by itself that comes from the wire. And the other one is going to be what people know as dirty electricity. The real name is transient responses to the load.
Okay, and for anyone who's never heard of dirty electricity, this is actually why I reached out to you in the first place back when I had hired you, because in my house I wasn't feeling well and I had already done the mold remediation. I had done all of these steps and I'm like, I have run out of options. I don't know what else could possibly be making me not feel well. And I went down the rabbit hole of dirty electricity. And then I was thinking that all of the wires in my house were giving off EMF and making me sick. And that was why I reached out to you. I still don't really know what would cause the dirty electricity. But when I called you, you assured me that we would address it. So
exactly. So those 2 things are pair, are together. Dirty electricity pretty much is, imagine that we can see the waves that we classify as low. So the classification of high frequency and low frequency is according to time. 1 second. How many waves this wire or this antenna produces in 1 second? That's what it matters. So I was saying here in the States, low frequencies, electricity produces 60 hertz per second. So that means that if we count it, there are going to be 60 waves in 1 second, and that is what we classify as low. Why we say low? Because the other one, high frequencies, would be 400,000
in 1 second.
In 1 second. So imagine it's going to be really small, etc.
Can you give examples of something that would give off high versus low frequency?
Yeah.
Or
so,
hertz? Sorry, is it frequency or hertz?
Try to remember when we listen to the radio. We're in the car and we're tuning the radio, and the guy said, hey, we're broadcasting 25 kilohertz. That is the frequency. Kilo means thousands.
Oh, the frequency is the frequency of hertz within the second?
Exactly.
Oh.
Exactly.
Frequency actually means it's quantifying how many hertz are within the second.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
That's what it is.
I gotcha.
So imagine the radio station broadcast, I don't know, I'm going to say something that is ridiculous. 2600 kilohertz. And this is the name of the station. We broadcast at 600 kilohertz. That means that it's really high because we have too many in 1 second. So versus 60, then that is why we classify low frequencies, electricity pretty much, and high frequencies, anything that has one antenna in one side and one receptor in the other one.
What are those though? Like
it could be as simple as the key fob from my car.
Oh.
That one, whenever I send a signal through the air, I'm sending it in a high frequency.
Oh, so your key fob would be a high frequency?
It would be a high frequency, and pretty much all the other ones, the ones that are in electrical wires, it would be low frequencies.
Okay. So high versus low doesn't necessarily mean one is worse or better, or does
No.
it?
No, it's not they both interact with humans.
Okay.
Now, the dosage matters. And we're going to divide it in a few things. Let's just finish talking about dirty electricity.
Yes, thanks.
So when the power company sends electricity to your house, this is hypothetical again. Imagine that you're the only house that the power plant is going to send electricity. There's no more houses. So it will come clean. It will come as 60 hertz. But those waves, they will be perfectly clean. If we can draw those ones, they won't have any disturbances in there. Now, it's a hypothetical. Whenever you plug in something into the outlet, you're creating a disturbance in that 60 hertz. That is a load, and it's a transit. It's just transitory. It would be just a few seconds. So every time that we plug in something in the electric system, we'll create dirty electricity. The more circuits the device that I'm plugging in has, the more dirty electricity that I will create. So let's say 1960s toaster. It only has one resistance. So if I plug it in, it's going to create a very small disturbance in there. Versus right now, a plasma TV that it has a lot of circuits in there. This one will create a huge amount of dirty electricity. It gets a little bit more complicated because the power plant, they send electricity to so many houses. So imagine that you have 10 houses.
Okay.
You have one transformer in one pole, and you have another transformer in the other pole for those in between those 10 houses. The transformer, whatever it does, not because they wanted this to happen, but it cleans the electricity. So there's not dirty electricity in there. as much.
Okay.
But then this one is going to power one house and it's going to create direct electricity in there. Then it's going to come back because it needs the same wires to go to the second house. So now the second house is absorbing EMFs with direct electricity from the first house as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
And
even if your own house was not having much dirty electricity in it, the house next door to you might, and you're
yeah,
taking that on.
because we use the neutral as a common for everybody in
Oh my
the
gosh.
house.
Okay.
So, I mean, it gets a little bit complicated, but here's the thing. I really, we want everybody, all the audience, to know more about these EMFs
Mm-hmm.
because if we don't know the details, then we can minimize it so much. Oh, yeah, EMFs is a thing, but don't worry. No, we should take care of knowing the very details. And again, that is why I had to study physics. All these things that I'm saying right now, as a medical doctor, they didn't teach me. I mean, I didn't know the anatomy of a power pole. But as a physicist, I had to understand the anatomy of a power pole and all these little details because I really need to understand my enemy. And then why do I say my enemy? Well, in the past, when I was a pediatrician and I tried to fight, I don't know, streptococcus, I need to understand my enemy. Which one is my enemy? Oh, the bacteria, the viruses, the rickettsias, the funguses, etc. Those were my enemies. The more that I know about them, the better that I know what is going to cause in the human body if you get infected with them. And I know how do I fight those things
Yeah.
in order for us to win. The team that has to win is the one that defeats the enemy, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I don't practice medicine that way because the kind of medicine that I practice is I'm trying to take away EMFs from at least your sleeping location.
Mm-hmm.
We need to pick battles, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take EMFs from everywhere. We should, but well, we can't. But we can in your sleeping location. If at least I can make a diagnosis. What is what you really are exposed to when you're sleeping? And if I can mitigate it, then your body will be restoring during those times of sleeping in a way better form than if you're exposed second after second, day after day, year after year in an environment that has high EMFs.
Right. So your philosophy on this is that you cannot mitigate every EMF that's all around us, but as a medical doctor and as a sleep expert, you know that while we're sleeping, that's the time that the human body is recovering and doing the most recovery against EMFs that we've been exposed to during the day.
Exactly.
So your philosophy is that because we cannot mitigate every EMF that's all around us throughout our day-to-day, let's focus on the place that matters most, which is where you are restoring, where you sleep, your bedroom.
Exactly.
Right?
Let me just say something about sleep medicine there because there's two types of sleep medicine.
Okay.
Sleep medicine, the way that is common here is pneumologist. I'm a neurologist. Pneumologists are the ones that take care of sleep apnea and things that collapse the respiratory airway. I can debate a little bit about that sleep medicine, but I don't want to offend anybody. Sleep medicine actually is more than that. It's biochemical ways of restoration during sleep. What is what your body, biochemically and electrically speaking, is doing during the time of sleep? And let me just say this. So if in the audience we have a pneumologist in there and get offended, well, please don't get offended.
If there's a pneumologist in the audience, you can come on the podcast and defend yourself.
Exactly. We can come together and agree on a few
I'll
things.
host the debate.
Exactly. The thing is that the difference between you awake and you asleep is the biochemical pathways that are activated in those two different stages. It's going to sound kind of weird, whatever I'm going to say, but it's not. You cannot be awake and asleep at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're awake, some biochemical pathways are activated to make your everyday life the way that it is. This is something that I cannot prove, and I'm pretty sure that we're not going to be able to prove, but I'm going to say it there. When we reach, and when I said we, I mean each one of the cells inside of the body reaches, and this is the number that I cannot prove, 8% of destruction. When this cell reaches 8% of enzymes being destroyed or damaged, 8% of DNA, 8% of organelles in there, mitochondria, etc. When they reach a certain amount of destruction, they send a signal. I cannot prove that signal yet, but hopefully eventually we can. But each one of them sends a signal to the human brain. And the human brain says, okay, it's enough. You guys reach a certain amount of destruction. Therefore, we can no longer be in the awake position. Whatever we have to do is we have to start restoring every single one of the damage that each one of you have. Now, why do we have DNA in each one of the cells? Because that is the blueprint of the enzymes and all the things that this cell needs in order to repair itself. Now, the example hopefully is not complicated. It's not complicated, right?
I'm barely following.
Okay, well,
But we can keep going.
But
yeah.
Imagine that you have one cell in the pancreas.
Yeah.
No, let's say, what is one of the disease that, pancreas, let's use that one because there's a lot of people with diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So imagine that this is the cell that actually produces insulin.
Yeah.
And this one reaches a certain amount of destruction or damage in the enzymes. Well, it doesn't matter as long as we sleep and restore.
I see. Okay. So you're saying whatever stress these cells have been under and whatever damage they've endured, it really is irrelevant as long as you're getting the proper sleep so that they can repair themselves?
Exactly.
Okay.
And now how that works. Imagine that being sleepy is the transition between being awake and being asleep. So it's just the brain is telling the cells, hey, enough of the awake position, start switching to sleep. Stage number 1. We know, everybody knows that we have stages of sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stage 1, stage 2, 3, REM, rapid eye movements, sleep, and after that, you restore perfectly well. Well, imagine that this is how it happened. Stage number 1. The brain is telling the cells, hey, I need you to make a diagnosis of what is the destruction that you individually have. Of course, we have so many cells in the body. They are not going to experiment the same damage as the other one. Actually, each one of them is individual. And so this one has to do the diagnosis of their own damage, while this one over here has to do the assessment of their own damage. So stage number 1 was assess what is the damage that you have. Stage number 2 is, okay, if we already know that you have enzymes that are no longer viable, then we need to totally destroy them. And we're going to use those amino acids again to make a new enzyme. We need to eat, and we will use those building blocks that we already have there to synthesize, to have a new enzyme. So imagine that stage number 3, REM, etc. At the next day, we should have this cell with new enzymes in there. So the day before, we have damage in there, but we went to sleep 8 hours And now we have new enzymes in that cell.
And you're describing the processes that are happening at each stage of sleep? Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So like for somebody who's drinking alcohol and they didn't get any REM sleep that night, you're saying that they don't wake up with those new enzymes.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
They cannot restore properly. And so it turns out that the main disruptor of sleeping is EMFs.
The main
The
disruptor
main
of sleeping is EMF.
Exactly. Exactly. That is why I actually left my practice, because imagine now that I know this. Okay, you're going to go to my office the next day and you're going to tell me, "Hey, I can't sleep." And then what can I do in order to make those stages if I already know that EMFs has the biggest role in you not being able to sleep?
Mhm.
And it's as simple as this. If you have EMFs during the night, then you're going to have some damage over time in the sleep process. But if I take it away, if I allowed you to sleep in a sanctuary area, in a room that it has less EMFs, and eventually we'll go, how do we do that?
Mhm.
But imagine that now you have a sanctuary where outside of the room, there's EMFs everywhere.
Yeah.
Inside of the room, there's lower EMFs.
Mhm.
Lower enough that you can actually start doing the restoration again.
Yeah.
It takes a while. It's not going to happen overnight. Actually, I did a study in Europe, and it takes a year
Wow.
sleeping with no EMFs, but you can recover.
Mhm.
The study that I did is trying to see homeostasis, electrical homeostasis of the central nervous system. And eventually we'll get to that part. But it turns out that every subject that I measure, it was already under the homeostasis stage.
Yeah.
That means that they have no defense or more defense against stressors,
Right.
whichever stressor is.
Yeah.
But if we take away EMF, eventually they can recover the homeostasis stage, which means that they are recovering the ability that we already have. We were born with homeostasis.
Mhm.
We lost it by being exposed to toxins, but they can recover that ability to fight again. And that's pretty much whatever we want. It's not that I want to take away EMFs just because. I want to take them away from the sleeping locations. So now you have the ability to fight again as the way it is supposed to be.
Mhm.
And eventually I'll get to another studies in there, but to make this point more clear.
Yeah, thank you. And it's so important, especially for people like me who've had experiences with chronic illness.
Yeah.
When I was really sick with my chronic illness, I was trying to mitigate every additional stressor in my life. And it's because I know that I can't control everything. I know that
Yeah.
there's so much outside of my control. So I was trying to find everything that was in my control. And the way you've gone about this is so smart because you know that you can't control all of the EMF.
Exactly.
You know that that's not a possibility in this day and age.
Yeah.
So you're going after the one place that we are supposed to restore. And when people are recovering from chronic illness, it's so important for them to create that sleep sanctuary where their
Yeah.
body is able to repair themselves as best that they can, because they're people who are already struggling to repair compared to the average person.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think this is just, it's such important research that you've done. I know that you've been doing this. This is with your own money and everything, right?
I did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really remarkable, and
Yeah.
it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Actually, now that we're talking about this, even if we're not going to talk about those subjects in here, I need people to understand. I find out 3 toxins that are very important for us in order not to break DNA, in order to regain homeostasis again. Of course, the number one is EMF, and this is the subject that we're talking about right now. But the second and the third one are as important. One is heavy metals.
Mm.
Heavy metals, in the past, and I'm going to talk about heavy metals as from the medical point of view. Again, a neurologist. A neurologist supposedly is the guy that is an expert in heavy metals. Well, we didn't know the first question. Where heavy metals come from? It turns out, I'm just going to say it really fast, from the pots and pans that we use every day to heat our food. If you go to a restaurant, well, the ones that they use, if you cook in your house, the ones that you use probably are just leaching. There's heavy metals in there.
Yeah, you called me out on my pots and pans when you came over to my house.
I did. Which I tell you later who we have to call in order to address that. But that is as important, because if not, we're just intaking heavy metals in a small dosage, but every day. So it's not that it's gonna taste. Oh yeah, I'm tasting the heavy metal. No, but we're getting a small dosage of there. The third one is water. Humans, we have been just focusing so much in filtration. Oh yeah, don't worry, I have an amazing filtration in my house. Yeah, filtration is very important, but the components of the water are the most important. H2O is H2O for a reason. And there's a property of the water, ORP. ORP stands for oxidation reduction potential. We need to make sure that we drink water that has a lower negative oxidation reduction potential. Eventually, if we have the chance to have another podcast, let's talk about that one, because it's amazing how biology actually works. But pretty much they absorb free radicals. Free radicals is the cause of damage for everything. Whether it's EMFs, EMFs are going to do something, and free radicals are going to be the last thing.
Can you define free radicals?
Yeah, free radicals it's molecules that we have inside. There's so many things that are very important for the human body. Food is one of them. But here's the thing. How long can we survive without food? Let's imagine that I'm going hiking and then I fell in a cave and nobody knows that I'm there. How long can I be there without food, without dying? I'm going to say a month and a half.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, kind of like
a pretty long time.
Yeah, we can get, as long as we don't move that much. And, I mean, I'm going to be very skinny. But yeah, we need food, but we can survive several days without it.
Yeah.
So that means that it's important. How long can we survive without water? Oh, things change in there. I will say no more than 10 days. So imagine that I'm in that cave. I really need to have a source of water in there, because if I don't, then after 10 days, I'm probably going to die. So water is extremely important. More important, not that it's more important, but it's more needed than food in that circumstances. But here's the other one. How long can we survive without breathing, without oxygen? That one, it changes the whole thing. I will say no more than 2 minutes. Otherwise, what happened is that every time that we breathe, we extract some electrons from the oxygen. Those electrons, hydrogen and oxygen, they go through a chain. It's called the electron transport chain inside of the mitochondria. And imagine that it's like a conveyor belt in there. So they extract some electrons, and those electrons go through this conveyor belt. When they reach the end of that conveyor belt, water is the one that has to grab those electrons. If it doesn't happen, whatever it goes free in there, it comes as a free radical.
Okay.
Free radicals, which most of them are from oxygen, are molecules that are lacking electrons.
Molecules lacking electrons.
And whatever that happens is that if they touch anything else, another molecule, they can disrupt that molecule. They destroy the molecule. And it can become a free radical as well. So there's a vicious cycle in there. Free radicals destroy things in a way that it cannot be repaired. And if we destroyed a whole mitochondria, then that cell by itself is starting to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, free radicals, I mean, I just said it in a simple way. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But free radicals at the end of the day are enemies as well. Because talking about the pancreas again, the beta cells of the pancreas, the one that produce insulin, we need it to be intact. We needed to take care of those ones, because once that they die or they get damaged from free radicals, whether it's from EMFs, from heavy metals, etc., if they get damaged, then we're going to have a huge symptom, which is what people know as diabetes. And diabetes is not fun, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that way, we can actually just mention so many different diseases. So just talking about this, we should be aware of EMFs as a toxin, heavy metals as well, and ORP of the water. And then we can regain homeostasis. But going back to EMFs.
Wait, I have a question. Where do you get your water from? What kind of water do you drink?
Well, whatever we have to do is now we have to use
if it's quick,
electricity. We have to do yes. I hopefully one day we can actually do a podcast about that, because I'm going to talk about the earth by itself, the magnetic field of the earth, how the magnetic field actually, we have rivers under the ground, right? And those rivers goes from miles and miles and miles. We don't even know exactly how they are mapped, but they're crossing electromagnetic fields from the earth, and they get that ORP filtration because they're going under the ground, and ORP from the magnetic field.
Okay.
So it has to be now man-made with a machine that produces a current. That current separates the molecules of water. ORP positive on one side, we don't drink that one. ORP negative on the other side, we drink that one.
Okay.
And it makes a difference, to be honest. But going back to EMFs.
We can go back. So I wanted to talk about potential health problems. We sort of touched on this. I know, at least in my experience, when I'm around a lot of EMF, I start to feel generally unwell. And it's really hard to define. It's like, I guess I have a little bit of nauseousness. I sort of have a headache. I just feel bad. And there aren't a whole lot of descriptors out there to explain my experience. And then whenever I get away from the EMF, I just feel less bad. So can you talk about what types of symptoms people come to you with and what people notice has resolved after they do the proper healing?
Yep, perfect. So low frequencies pretty much are going to give us one side of damage. And that is going to be more if we can imagine inside of the cell. We have so many different components in there, right? Each one of them, by law, now of biology.
Law of biology.
And now biology. By law, they need to have their own electric charge. And that is how they interact with one another. They know, hey, it's my turn to interact because of the charge that they have. But now, that would be in a normal circumstances. When that cell doesn't have any other source of charges, electrical charges, but the ones that they have themselves. But imagine that now next to a power line or next to these walls, and these walls I know that they have wires inside, therefore they're producing a magnetic field, and now that magnetic field is exerting a force into this cell that by definition it had to have their own electricity. So now my enzymes, they're like, oh my goodness, I have to fight against this new force that I don't know where it's coming from. I hope that I can explain it like that. But they're feeling that force. Their force, they can break. So whenever we are exposed to electromagnetic fields from low frequencies, we can break enzymes. Now, hopefully I can give this example perfectly well. High blood pressure. The brain has nerves that goes to the blood vessels. And the blood vessels, they have to be dynamic. They either have to be very wide sometime or they have to be very small sometimes. So who decides? The brain decides which ones.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see now, the brain can play with these two different sizes. If I get up right now and my central nervous system is not that well, I'm going to get dizzy. Just give me a few seconds. What happened is that I didn't do this adjustment fast enough for whatever reason it is.
It's a really good thing that you're using this example because a lot of my listeners have something called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which is when, a lot of us experience when we stand up too fast and we faint or we get dizzy, and it's because our blood vessels aren't constricting and expanding at the right cadence. There's a communication problem with the brain.
Exactly.
I actually went to physical therapy and started working on this. We did work on my brain, and I don't faint as much anymore.
Okay.
I don't have to wear compression as much anymore. This is such a tangent, but I'm just so glad you're using this example.
It goes
it's really
in the
relevant.
Same, yeah. So basically, this is what happened, right? So I didn't do it fast enough. If I don't get dizzy, that means that it was fast enough that it regulates.
Yeah.
Now, the nerves innerving these blood vessels, they're going to have a current. They're going to have a signal using electric current from the central nervous system, electricity again. That electricity at the very end of that neuron is going to become chemical. So basically, it's first electrical, and once that electric signal gets from the source to the end, it releases some chemicals. So if we have a source of low frequencies, EMFs, and let me get a few facts before. Imagine that this nerve, the one is carrying that signal. If we measure the electricity, I'm going to lie in here. It's not really the number, but I'm going to say it has to be -5 microvolts. So in normal circumstances, that should be -5. If it's like that, then it's going to bring the signal perfectly well because the brain is going to tell him, hey, that -5, now I'm going to send a signal that is +20. Therefore, the actual signal is going to be +15. -5 +20 is going to equal to +15 because we counter in there. Do I can explain that?
I think
yeah. So imagine that -5 in normal circumstances, now it become +7 because the electric activity that is in the walls on my house. So the brain doesn't know that now it changes. Not the brain want that to be changed because that is part of the machinery that the brain use in order to give signals. So imagine that now you have +7. That means that some of the chemical is going to be releasing accidentally. Well, it's not accidentally. It's because you have a toxin, an electric toxin, that it bring from -5 to +7. So it's going to be releasing.
It's causing your body to not be calibrated correctly.
Exactly. Oh, that's the right word. It's not calibrated. Therefore, the blood vessel now is constricted because that's what those chemicals do. Instead of being open like that, it's being constricted almost permanently.
Wait, so are you saying that once we shield my bedroom, it's possible that some of my POTS symptoms will improve?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And this is the logic behind it.
Amazing.
The logic behind it is that I'm going to take away, those walls are going to take away that signal. And therefore, you only going to have your own signal. You're not going to have that enemy,
Yeah.
that foreign electric field that it was before. Of course, it's going to take time because you've been exposed to those for decades.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
But here's the other thing. What happened with the blood vessel that permanently is being constricted? So it cannot be like that for so many hours. So it's going to start having ruptures in there. The blood vessel is muscle. It's smooth muscle. So when a smooth muscle breaks, it's going to try to repair, but it's going to repair it with fibrosis.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe you're talking about this because we never even talked about this, but I also have lipedema, which is caused by leaky blood vessels that create fibrotic tissue.
Exactly.
This is so crazy.
Imagine, and we haven't talked about this.
No, we didn't even prep with this one. This is so
this
relevant.
Is amazing. So this is what explains why we have symptoms.
Wow.
So let's keep going to this analogy.
This is a great one.
Yeah. So imagine that we have now this blood vessel that it was constricted for so long, every day, for several hours, and now it has fibrosis in there. Therefore, even if you don't have EMFs right now, that fibrosis is going to prevent that smooth muscle to be open and closed the way that the brain wants it to be. Of course, repairing at night over time will compensate, but we have to start with stop the injury first off.
Yeah.
So high blood pressure and all those things that we just described so far, it can be explained because we have electromagnetic fields interfering with the electric system that is meant to make differences in between the systems that we have. So that is one example.
What a relevant example, too. Yeah, so many of my listeners have POTS and lipedema. They experience fibrosis, and it shouldn't be so shocking to hear that EMF is making a tremendous impact on these conditions.
Yeah,
but it is. It's really crazy because nobody's talking about it.
Yeah.
So.
And hopefully, eventually, we can do just one podcast of that because I can show with models exactly how the things happen.
Wow.
I mean, right now we're just talking, right? And probably somebody's going to say, oh, I kind of didn't get it. Well, let me do it with visual aids so everybody can understand exactly what is with EMFs. We're talking about right now low frequencies. If those low frequencies are contaminated with really high dirty electricity, then the damage is faster and the damage is more extensive. So we're talking about just low frequencies in here. So again, when I learn about these things, about EMFs, which I was saying that not a lot of people pay attention to this, there was people that pay attention to this. In 1953, I realized that whenever I started learning about this, there was already publications about this. They were publications that are really difficult to understand because it's pure physics. Pure physics talking about the physics of the human cell and the physics of the electromagnetic fields around it, how they absorb each other. Well, not each other. One absorbs the other one. We lose all the time. So whatever I had to understand is how do I make something that is an equation now functional? And this is why I really had to stop practicing medicine because I need to learn. It turns out that there was no protocol how to measure. Imagine how many Wi-Fis do you think that we have around?
Oh my God.
I don't know, but probably so many. How many cell phone towers do you think that we have around? How many satellites we have that are broadcasting in this area? How many cell phones are around from people that are walking around us? Therefore, each one of them is going to emit something and is going to be colliding with each other. If we could see them, it would be a chaos of waves that we're exposed to in here. Now, how do you assess something that is so chaotic? At the same time, we have very limited resources, meters. Yeah, you have to use meters, right? But the meters are not 100% correct. Imagine a meter is going to measure, is going to try to have a baseline. But right now, there's no real baseline without EMFs anywhere in the world, I will say, because there's EMFs everywhere. So they have to kind of made up their baseline. And that baseline is not going to be correct because we have so much EMFs already.
When you say the baseline, is there like
the
an
meter
organization?
No. Sorry, I'm talking about the meter by itself.
Oh, the meter needs a
The meter,
baseline
yeah.
to assess. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Imagine that we have 1 meter in here. The meter, the only thing that it does is measure what is the difference between his own baseline, supposedly is no EMFs, with what is reading from the antenna.
That makes sense.
So whatever it is going to give you is that gap. Oh, so we have 5 or we have 20, etc. But it turns out that baseline is not real anymore. The more sophisticated the meter is, the better that difference it is. So yeah, if a lot of people has a tri-field meter, it's not going to give you that much information because so many waves colliding to each other is going to overwhelm that meter extremely fast.
Yeah.
So,
and these meters are being marketed as EMF detection meters, but the meter's not going to be able to keep up.
It's going to be really inaccurate.
It's going to be really inaccurate, but the meter's not going to make it look like it's inaccurate. The meter's going to appear like it's detecting things. But something, and if this is derailing you, we can backtrack. But something that was really interesting to me when you were doing the testing at my house was that you had multiple meters to account for that. You had, I don't know, how many did you bring?
8.
You brought 8 meters.
Yeah.
And the goal was to cross-check them.
Yeah.
And then you did this calculation to account for other things. Can you talk about that?
So each meter is going to tell me a few things. And sometimes, now, the meters that I use are professional meters. That is a huge difference between the tri-field thing. But even those ones, even if they're professional, they're going to lie to me as much. So the one thing that I do first in the house is I need to know what is the interference factor. How many waves are colliding to each other that they actually misled my meter? And I have to account for each one of the meters.
Can you clarify what that means? If the meter is being misled?
Yeah, that means that you're going to say, hey, there's not that many EMFs in this room. That's amazing. No, the meter actually is very inaccurate. And it turns out that it's not measuring so many waves that we have in there.
So each of your meters was measuring a different type of EMF?
We have to measure different types from different forms. So it's kind of like pieces of puzzles. You have to put all the pieces together in order to know what is the real exposure.
Right.
Because that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know what is your real exposure at night. Because if I say, hey, your exposure is very minimal, then you're probably going to say, oh, then there's nothing that I should do because my exposure is low. It turns out that you have that false sense of security because we start with the wrong meter, with the wrong protocol. Whatever I have to do is I have to run a protocol. That was my point, that I have to make a protocol following the laws of physics because waves ricochet with each other. They interact and they mislead my meters. So I have to run equations. I have to measure the room with all the meters in different locations of the room. And then I have to measure with the electricity on. And then I cut the power completely from the house. Electricity off. That difference, people will say, oh, that's a little difference. But enough difference so I can just run equations between these two numbers that I have. they differ so much with electricity, without electricity. The same room, etc. I can identify if waves are coming with this amount of strength and where they coming from. One of the meters that I use is which signal is actually carrying in that area. So that is why we use so many. The point is that it's like anything in medicine. Imagine this. You come to my office, I go to your house. This is from the medical point of view, I go and measure your house. You come to my office and you tell me all your symptoms. I go to your house and I assess the EMFs in there. If I make the wrong diagnosis, I'm going to give you treatment anyways. But the treatment is not going to work because I start with an error already. I don't have the right diagnosis. Therefore, you're going to come 6 months later, 1 year later, etc. You're going to say, this guy didn't get it because it didn't work. Yeah, of course it didn't work because I didn't have the right diagnosis at the beginning. This would be the equivalent of that. If I don't use professional meters, if I don't run equations to know what is the reality of your exposure, then it's the equivalent that I have the wrong diagnosis.
Right.
Therefore, if I give a treatment, you're not going to get better. So that is why it's crucial that we have the most accurate diagnosis in each house. Why? Because then we need to tailor a solution for that specific thing, which is not that difficult to understand. If you have this amount of exposure and I try to shield you with this amount of strength, I'm not going to cover everything. Therefore, you're going to say, yeah, I don't feel that great.
Right.
Which is would be a sin for me, right? My job is to understand what is your exposure and to mitigate that exposure. Not just that, eventually there's going to be more cell phone towers. There's going to be more density. I have to fight against what could happen in the future as well. So I hope that I can explain that.
Yeah.
But going back to the false sense of security. Having a meter that you buy online and etc. It's not bad, but we need to have a professional assessment. A professional assessment that with professional meters, with equations, with already established protocol that is backed by physics, by science. And if we don't have that, then we might have the false sense of security. Oh, my house is not that bad, so don't worry. I'm going to take care of other toxins because this one is not the main issue.
Yeah, I can give my own personal example of this, which is when I bought that EMF detector, I was, just putting it up against the walls by the outlets, trying to test out where the EMFs might have been coming from, thinking I had dirty electricity. And when you came to my house, I didn't even think about the solar panels that were on the roof, and those are right above the master bedroom. I also didn't think about the fact that I have this shared wall with my neighbor. It's like a unit A, unit B situation, and there's this shared wall. And after you did your assessment, even when we turned off all the electricity in my house, there were all these EMFs coming from the neighbor's side. And what I didn't account for was the fact that these are not just EMFs coming in one direction. These are EMFs that are potentially ricocheting off of the other walls, causing them to multiply. And I also didn't realize that I am the conductor as a human who's electrical. An electrical human being is a conductor of these EMFs. And you taught me that if I am the one doing the EMF testing with this detector,
as well.
I'm also conducting some of these EMF, which is potentially making it inaccurate. So you have this whole calculation that takes that out of account. Into account because you're the consistent common denominator on all these tests.
Exactly. Yeah. I test the same way always with the same protocol. And then I can just subtract or I can check what is the interference factor.
Yeah.
It turns out that in your house, construction materials matter sometimes. It turns out that they put a barrier in between those two houses and the metal that they use, because it's not that they did something wrong. the metal that people use for constructions, they are alloys that can act as an antenna. So I find out that wall actually is kind of emitting a little bit more. Not that much, but enough that it disrupts that ricocheting factor in the way that the waves behave, which I have to touch right now. We're right now in a room, right? And EMFs are constantly getting in here from different directions. Well, they eventually are going to make a pattern in here. And I'm going to try to make this example. Imagine that we have a cell phone here. And inside of this room, maybe in this side, we don't have that much a good reception. But if we move a little bit to the other side of the room, we have better reception. It's not that we don't have EMFs in here, but we have so many that I'm going to say this example. Imagine that my phone is AT&T, and this one has to communicate with the antenna that is in the same frequency, right? But if we have another antenna, I'm going to say Verizon, that is emitting a higher wattage, a stronger signal in this room, then they're going to interact with each other. Because they made a pattern in here, the cell phone is going to try to fight against all those different waves in order to reach to the one that he wanted to reach. That's why we have spotty frequencies in here. It's not because we don't have signals. It's because we have so many. That we need to take in account, because whenever we shield, and probably that word is not the right word anymore, because shielding, people think that no EMFs can get in here. No. Whatever we do when we put EMF protection, I'm going to say for this second, the walls are absorbing more. They have to be connected always to a medical grade grounding system.
Okay, so now you're talking about what to do about this.
Yes.
So for everybody who's listening and asking, well, I understand now that EMFs are harmful. I understand now that you do something to the bedroom where you're restoring. That's where you want to do whatever
to
you
be
need to do. But
free
what is it? Yeah, so you're
EMFs
to be free of EMS. So what is it that you do?
Okay, the core of any EMFs, and I hope that people start applying a little bit the logic of physics. I don't want to offend anybody, but physics as the one that dictates everything. We need to try to capture radiation, EMFs. The right word was radiation, but we have to capture them. So we code the room where you're going to sleep. The ceiling, the doors, the walls, the floor, if it's possible, we're going to code it. And then that is going to capture EMFs. Now, capturing EMFs is half of the solution. Now we need to send those EMFs somewhere else.
I want to make a distinction. You're not talking about blocking EMFs.
No blocking.
You're talking about capturing
Exactly.
EMFs. Okay.
Exactly. Reflecting a little bit, but capturing more.
Capturing.
And then we have to connect it to a medical grade grounding system. The fact that we have outlets, and those outlets have 3 holes in there, and one of them is called grounding, mislead a lot of people that, oh, that's the ground. The ground, no, that's not a medical grade grounding system. That is actually part of the electric system, which will be contaminated 100% of the time.
Right. This is something everybody reaches out to me saying that they have grounding sheets, so it's fine. And what you told me is that when you plug those grounding sheets into the outlet, the grounding part of that outlet 100% of the time is going to be contaminated electricity. It's
in
not
any
going
country.
to be helpful. In any country.
I live in different countries. Well, I've been doing this in different countries. Every single country that I measure, every single city, because it's not just one country, it's different cities, 100% of the time that I measure it is contaminated. So that is part of the electric system of the house.
Yeah, the grounding part of the outlet is just to make sure that it doesn't catch on fire.
Exactly.
It's not to actually put it into the ground and protect your body.
It is into the ground, but it's into the ground with something that is called steel carbon rods. They're not for EMFs. Not for EMFs. So false sense of security is having those grounding sheets and connected to them, to there. It needs to be connected to something that is called medical grade grounding system. The key element, the cornerstone of fighting electromagnetic fields is that medical grade grounding system, which is a system that is made, it's a complicated system. Let's not talk about the complexity, but it has some treated copper rods. Everything is treated in there. And it has different coils, some to absorb EMFs, some to prevent contamination inside of the house. And eventually that will make sense. The thing is that is an apparatus that is meant to absorb EMFs and send it to the ground.
Okay, so
if we don't have that,
this thing is absorbing the EMFs and sending it into the ground. Not blocking them.
No blocking it.
Absorbing and sending it into the ground.
Exactly. If we don't have that, there's no way that we're sending anything to the ground. Oh, I already plug it into the grounding. No, please, I really need people to understand whatever we're doing is a bad practice. It's just a medical grade grounding system, the only thing that absorbs so far.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the cornerstone. Whenever we shield the house, which we already have all the equipment to do it, we're going to attach that medical grade grounding system into the capturing areas inside of the room. In your house in particular, we're going to put some particles. We use carbon, graphite, and cobalt most, not the cobalt that is radioactive, but those things to ricochet, to reflect or to absorb a little bit better the EMFs. So we're going to play with those properties and always attach it to a medical grade grounding system so it can just be captured and sent to the ground. Mm-hmm. Therefore, whoever is inside of that room is not going to absorb because the walls are the one absorbing.
Right.
Just going a little bit into this grounding system. So it has two probes in there. When it's absorbing so much EMFs, one of the probes is going to saturate, but they're connected. So when this one gets saturated, the other one starts absorbing, giving time to this one to release all the EMFs.
Okay.
Eventually, this one is going to get saturated. So they're switching. Mm-hmm. Therefore, EMFs are being dispersed into the ground constantly.
And this is because as a human being, I am an electrical conductor of EMF, but we don't want me to be conducting the EMF. Exactly. And in my bedroom, when I'm supposed to be restoring and my cells are repairing themselves, I don't want to be a conductor of the EMF. So we are turning the walls into the conductor and then using the medical grade grounding system to send what the walls have absorbed.
Already absorbed.
Into the ground.
Exactly.
I have that right?
You have it perfectly well. And it kind of makes sense, right? I need something else to take whatever. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I will absorb in this room.
Yeah.
So that is what a sanctuary will be. A room where now, if you sleep in that room, you will start doing your restoration properly. Mm-hmm. The way that it's meant to. And let's remember, one ability, one superpower that we have as humans is that I have the ability to repair.
Yes.
If I get an injury, I'm going to repair my injury. If I have diabetes, well, I mean, there's some that ones that we reach one point. But yeah, imagine that I have diabetes, but I start sleeping with no EMFs. Well, the rest of the system is going to get better because we don't have this electric toxin that is hour after hour just pounding my body.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that when the body is given the right conditions and the right resources, it will repair itself.
Yeah.
And I think EMF is just an example of one of those conditions that is causing the body to not be able to repair itself as efficiently as it could without it. So, on my health journey, my goal has been to understand all of these things that are impacting my health and try to mitigate the ones that are within my power. And EMF is one that's within my power thanks to you because
Yeah.
you've educated me on how it's impacting my body. And of course, now how to redirect that EMF into the earth so that my body's not absorbing all of it.
Exactly. Now I would love one day if we can actually go through how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of visual aids that I would love people to understand how the human body works. I'm going to make everybody a physiologist so they can understand why things work one way. And
Mm.
then I'm going to make them pathophysiologists. The way that diseases work and how toxins impact. Here's the point that I was trying to make to myself 20 years ago, 19 years ago, is there's so many toxins out there because we humans, we're not the smartest people in this world and we contaminate everything. There's so many toxins in there. I had to understand which ones are the most important,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that transcends more and more damage to my body. We didn't get to this point, but breaking DNA is one of the things that EMFs, high frequencies, does. Pulses of high frequencies breaks DNA. And we need from 3 to 30 electron volts, something that EMFs have, to destroy DNA. Whenever I measure houses, I need to know how many electron volts you have in there from man-made electromagnetic fields.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have 30 electron volts with exposure for 3 days. Imagine every 3 days that you live in that house, we have the potential to break DNA, which implies so many other things. If we break DNA, then we're going to repair DNA. If we repair DNA more than whatever we should, we're going to have mutations. Cancer is nothing else but mutations.
Mm-hmm.
So many things in so many ways, EMFs are a factor. Knowing how things happen, how things work from the deep biology, deep physics point of view is the way that we can understand and prevent.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I appreciate you always being willing to break it down in terms that even I can understand and terms that the average person can understand because not everyone, actually, nobody has your background.
Yeah.
And not everyone has the ability to comprehend some of these topics, but they really do impact us every day in ways that we can't see. So I appreciate you being willing to be here and educate us on these things.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, hopefully we can do more in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people are interested in reaching out to you to get an EMF home inspection, where can they reach you?
EMFhometesting.com.
EMFhometesting.com.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ritter.
Thank you so much for having me here.